Class, welcome back. The course title is Morphology and Syntax, Basic, Semester 4, BS English. Today our topic of discussion is syntax and part of speech. The relationship between syntax and part of speech in a way that how this grammatical phenomena is important to discuss syntactic categories. As you know that syntax is very much different from semantics, but we need to discuss that the open and closed classes of words and how they are able to distinguish on the basis of morphology and syntax. We know that syntax is the part of linguistics that studies sentence structure, and under this sentence structure umbrella we discuss word order, we discuss agreement, complements, hierarchical structure. For example, if we say the word order, if I say I want these books, it's a grammatical sentence, whereas if I say want these I books, it's not a grammatical sentence, it's ungrammatical. So while word order is very much important to understand the meaning, and then agreement, the subject and verb agreement, the determiner and noun often must agree. For example, he wants this book. If I say he want this book, I want these books, I want these books. So in these two examples, the one sentence that is he wants this book is a grammatical, whereas he want that is missing the s with verb in present indefinite tense is ungrammatical, whereas in I want these books is quite grammatical, whereas I want these books is ungrammatical, because in order to explain the plurality of books we need to write these books instead of these books. And then how many complements, which prepositions and forms, cases. For example, I give Mary a book. If I say I see Mary a book, it's quite ungrammatical. I see her is a grammatical sentence, whereas I see she, it's quite ungrammatical. And then hierarchical structure is very much important because it modifies. For example, we need more intelligent leaders. It means that more of intelligent leaders. And if I say we need more intelligent leaders, it means that leaders that are more intelligent. So we need to understand what modifies what. So syntax is not about meaning. Sentences can have no sense and still be grammatically correct. Under this example, colorless green ideas sleep furiously. It's grammatical, but it's not meaningful. It's meaningless. And then sleep ideas colorless furiously green. It's ungrammatical as well as meaningless. So form is and its correct arrangement with correct meaning is very much important. Now, part of speech. We have practiced this phenomena a lot through our school age as well. We have defined that there are 8 important parts of speech of English language. In part of speech, words in a language behave differently from each other, because every word has a grammatical or syntactic category. So in a language, it will behave differently from each other. Every syntactic category has its particular characteristics, grammatical characteristics to order with the other words. But not each word is entirely different from all other words in that language. We can categorize the words. It's not possible that each word is entirely different from all other words in that language. In that case, it would be very difficult to discuss or describe language under a rule governed phenomena. So there is a certain amount of arbitrariness in any such classifications. For example, should my be classified as a pronoun or as a determiner? Should numerals, participles, auxiliary verbs be a separate category? If he is a pronoun, should do be a proverb? Means before verb we will put do with he. So words can be categorized into part of speech. Lexical categories. Parts of speech are the lexical categories, word classes, and they are based on their morphological, syntactic and semantic properties. As you see in the diagram, in the table, the classes, there are 2 classes we have discussed in detail under the lesson of morphology, that there are 2 classes of words or morphemes, open class and closed class. With reference to part of speech, we will discuss that nouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs, they belong to open class, because they actually they have the capacity of addition of new items in the language, whereas in closed items there are determiners, auxiliary verbs, not verbs. These are the auxiliary verbs, pronouns, prepositions and conjunctions. And for closed class part of speech, there is rare addition of new items, because they are functional verbs. So it's not possible to add a new items in the language. So if I just describe the summary of open classes, I can say that nouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs in accordance with morphology, syntax and semantics are included in open class. You can examine in the table that noun, verb, adjective and adverbs are there. And then typical morphology structure, for example, house and houses. And then if we say that verb, tenses, walk and walked, and adjectives as big, bigger, biggest, and adverb really, but, well, And typical syntax is determinal will come before the adjective, the big house, and if we consider under the verb that is combines with an auxiliary would walk, and then the adjectives, the big house, and then modifiers under the adverb, a really big house. And typical semantics, if we say that nouns are things, persons and places, and verbs are actions, and adjectives are quality or property, and adverbs are manner and degree. So these four categories, we can say that have the capacity to have some innovations. Now look at the closed classes. Under the closed classes, part of speech, articles, quantifiers, possessives, those come before nouns, pronouns, prepositions and conjunctions, they are included under closed class. They are mainly the functional or grammatical words. If we say that determiners are the, many, any, all, several, my, your, his, and if we say that we see auxiliary verbs will, may, must, shall, would. Likewise the pronouns I, you, he, she, it, we, and the prepositions in, on, about, with, at, to, of, under, and the conjunctions are but, and. So especially one thing is very much surprising regarding auxiliary verbs, that they are fixed and they are used to express negation, question and agreement. So they also come under the closed class. We cannot change them. We cannot anything add on for these class. As shown in the table, normal verbs are different from auxiliary verbs. How? Because for negation, verbs needs auxiliary do. I don't want it. We cannot say that I want not it, because it would be ungrammatical. An auxiliary verb directly say, for example, I don't will come. We cannot say. We will say I will not come. And question needs auxiliary do. For example, do you know it, or know you it? And do you will come is not appropriate. It's ungrammatical under the head of auxiliary verb. So we just use will you come. So please look at the table so that you can understand the differentiation between normal verbs and auxiliary verbs. Like we are very much specific for agreement. For example, if I say he knows it, it is a grammatical, whereas agreement is actually found between pronoun and verb. So that's why we have used knows with he pronoun. And he will come will also ungrammatical under auxiliary verb, and we will use he will come. So besides open and closed class under and with specific to part of speech, there are some words belonging to more than one lexical category. Some words belong to several categories. For example, they have similar, for example, she talks very much versus she is giving 3 talks. Now talks, the first sentence, and in the later on the other sentence has the similar meaning. They have the similar meanings. So some words they belong to several categories, but they have similar meanings. Likewise, the second example, it's cold versus I got a cold. So cold is here under the same meaning, under the similar meaning. But there are some other words, for example, and they have completely different meanings as well. For example, I can't bear the noise versus there is a bear in the wood. So those the both bear, they are same, but the meaning are different. And then tree barks versus the dog barks. In first sentence, tree barks, that is a noun, whereas in other sentence it is working as verb. So virtually all English nouns can be turned into verbs. In English, a noun phrase, a determiner followed by a noun, or determiner followed by an adjective, followed by a noun, or a single noun, or we can say these rules, these are the phrase structure rules describing noun phrases. These are also the constituents, the syntactic categories which are made by phrase structure rules. You can see in A part, noun phrase is made of determiner and noun, the cat. And second, noun phrase is made up of determiner, adjective and noun, those noisy cats. And third is, noun phrase is made up of only noun, cats. And the last example or rule is, noun phrase is made up of adjective and noun, noisy cats. So we can mark optional sub-phrases as well. A phrase structure rule tell us two major things. Which smaller phrases, for example determiner, adjective and noun, used to build a bigger phrase, bigger noun phrase. And the second one is how to order the smaller phrases in a phrase, in a basic phrase. It allows noisy cats but not cats noisy. So we need to follow a particular rule and principle to make the meaningful phrase. Now you can see that bracket representation of a noun phrase is those noisy cats. A noun phrase is containing determiner, adjective and noun. In addition, a pronoun can be a noun phrase as well. For example, we can use she or you, and that is called noun phrase under syntax. Likewise, describing the noun phrase through phrase structure rules and constituents, we can also describe prepositional phrases. In English, preposition is usually followed by a noun phrase. Let's ignore the preposition at the end of the sentence, because we are describing here the rules. So it is no doubt having a specific category or empty category if the preposition is at the end of the sentence. But for now, we are dealing the basic principle of prepositional phrase, and that is prepositional phrase is made up of preposition and noun phrase. For example, about those noisy cats. So now we can put that together and things like this. Prepositional phrase is made up of basically a preposition about and the noun phrase separately, which is containing determiner, adjective and noun, those noisy cats. Now, like the noun phrases and prepositional phrases, under phrase structure rules, we can also describe the sentences overall. In English, a sentence consists of a subject, usually a noun phrase, and that noun phrase is followed by a verb, which is sometimes followed by an object, or you can say another noun phrase, and other prepositional phrase, etc. For example, Alphonse slept. It is the combination, this is a sentence and it's a combination of subject and verb. And then Alphonse saw his dog. It's a combination of subject and verb and object. And then Alphonse asked for a beer. And then Alphonse begged beer from his dog. So if we do have the phrase structure rules applied on these sentences, it can be like this. First is like this. We in next slide describe the structure, the phrase structure rules behind these sentences in detail. You can see here the first sentence, S is made up of noun phrase and verb. Alphonse slept. And the second is sentence is made up of noun phrase, verb and again a noun phrase. And that is Alphonse saw his dog. The third one is S is made up of, or sentence is made up of noun phrase, verb and prepositional phrase. Alphonse asked for a beer. And the last S or last sentence under the rules, phrase structure rule, is the combination of noun phrase, verb, noun phrase and prepositional phrase. For the sentence, Alphonse asked his dog for a beer. So, of course, the sentences like Alphonse offered his dog some beer. Under this sentence, the S or sentence is made up of noun phrase, verb phrase and then noun phrase and again followed by another noun phrase. So, NP, S is followed by NP, V, NP and again another NP. And in next sentence, Alphonse argued with his dog about beer. Under this, S is made up of noun phrase, verb, and then prepositional phrase, and again a prepositional phrase. So unlike the first example where the duplication of noun phrases are there, here the prepositional phrases are dual. They are in double forms. With his dog and the first one, and the second prepositional phrase is about beer. Likewise, the third example, Alphonse persuaded his dog to buy some beer. Under this, S is made up of NP, V, NP and infinitive phrase, to buy some beer. So infinitive phrase is also followed by a noun phrase after the main verb. So there are the rules, there are some specific rules. Under those rules, the combination or arrangement of words are coming together in sentence. And the last example, Alphonse persuaded his dog that it would be wise to bring beer. Under this, S is made up of noun phrase and verb and noun phrase, and then that after that is actually a relative clause, and then again a sentence. So sentence under a sentence. Up till now in the above example we have seen phrases into phrases, and then finally a sentence is made up of. But in last example, sentence is carrying another sentence as well. So linguists often distinguish between sentences and verb phrases. A verb phrase is a sentence without a subject. For example, saw his dog. Then you have to describe sentence in 2 steps. First one, S is made up of noun phrase and verb phrase, and then verb separately. Second step, verb separately, verb phrase you need to describe. For example, here verb phrase is made up of verb and then noun phrase and prepositional phrase. In this diagram, bracketing representation, if we say, this rule says sentence is a noun phrase followed by a verb and possibly some other noun phrase and or a prepositional phrase. For example, Alphonse saw his dog. So his dog is another noun phrase, whereas the Alphonse is also a noun phrase. So this is actually that sentence is embedded with other phrases, with other noun phrases, verb phrases and prepositional phrases as well. Now, one thing is very much clear, that phrase structure trees and phrases are created from other phrases or words or words. Phrases are created from other phrases or words. What's the important is the arrangement, their order. their hierarchy of syntactic categories. It is important, and the rules behind them, how these arrangements and how the ordering of words and grammatical words, lexical words, they can become a right, or you can say the grammatical combination. And sentence is the biggest phrase. There is noun phrase which has its own phrase structure rules. There is verb phrase which has its own phrase structure rules. There is, prepositional phrase which has its own tree structure or phrase structure rules. But the biggest is the sentence phrase, and sentence phrase has its own principles or rules, we can say. So we can depict the fact that a sentence is built from smaller parts by this diagram. The smaller parts are called phrases or sometimes clauses. But for phrase structure trees, we need to know that these smaller parts representation is done by the phrases instead of clauses. So we consider clause here under S or sentence. So the example is given below, that is the little boy chases his dog. So if we make the phrase structure tree of this diagram of this sentence, the S is combination of NP, noun phrase, verb and another noun phrase. The little boy is noun phrase, chases is verb, and his dog is another noun phrase after the verb. And if we consider this noun phrase, the little boy, it's the combination of determiner, the adjective little, and noun boy, and verb is chases, and another noun followed by verb, it is the combination of determiner and a noun, his dog. So we need to know that this sentence is underlying the structure of NP, V, and again an NP. So through this, the syntactic or sentences, they are represented through phrase structure rules. And you know that phrase structure rules are a type of rewrite rule used to describe a given languages. Like we have here described the language or syntax of English, and they are closely associated with the early stages of transformational grammar. And what is transformational grammar? In linguistics, transformational grammar is part of the theory of generative grammar, especially of natural languages, and it considers grammar to be a system of rules. That system of rules which generate exactly those combination of words that form grammatical sentences in a given language, and it involves the use of defined operations, and these operations are called transformations to produce new sentences from existing ones. So when we produce the new sentences from existing ones, we have some definite operation or transformation under this. So again, on phrase structure rules, they are a type of rewrite rule used to describe a given language's syntax and are closely associated with the early stages of transformational grammar. It is the idea of phrase structure rules is proposed by Noam Chomsky in 1957, and they are used to break down a natural language sentences into its constituent parts, into subcategories, or syntactic categories, or grammatical categories, or called as functional categories. And these include both the lexical categories, the part of speech we have discussed as under open class, nouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs, and under the functional categories, the rest of 4 part of speech, prepositions, conjunctions and pronouns. And these are also, we can use the phrasal categories to describe phrase structure rules. And phrase structure rules, they are commonly employed to operate according to constituency relation as well. Constituency relation is also, in syntactic analysis, is a word or group of words that functions as a single unit within a hierarchical structure, and the constituent structure of sentence is identified by using some test for constituents to see the order or arrangements, whether what arrangement under phrases they are possible to make, and they are present in language, in the structure of language. In this way we check the constituency as well. In next lecture we will discuss the constituency rules separately. So the constituency relations, they are also important under phrase structure trees, and to express the grammar it is also, and that how these rules are making or arranging the grammar of any language. So that's what we have described for phrase structure rules and syntax, especially the relationship of syntax with part of speech, because part of speech are the fundamental grammatical categories, or we can say that grammatical labeling, and then we formally start syntactic categories, describing the syntactic categories under morphological, semantic and syntax aspects. So that was, and we ended in phrase structure trees. So phrase structure trees is very seminal work in generative grammar. Later on, after 1957, Chomsky and his followers, they have built up new theories and emerging theories in this regard. And the important syntactic theories are the universal grammar, principle and parameters, and minimalist program, and then government and binding theories. So under this we actually examine how the sentences and how the combination of sentences under the phrase rules, they are described, and they are capable to construct the arrangements of words into sentences. So this is all about the syntax and part of speech. A tree diagram represents several aspects of how words are put together in sentence. As we have discussed earlier, that the order of words in a sentence, the word class of each word, and the hierarchical structure, the ordering structure of a sentence, and the grouping of words into phrases, and the grouping of phrases into larger phrases as well. And the last is that the centers or origins of phrases that other words group around. For example, noun in noun phrase and verb in sentences. So, for more readings, you can consult the following references, and good luck for next time.